It's safe to say Arsenal have turned it around in the last few years and are now a title-chasing team. Now, while this is down to a lot of things, the transfers are a key part of this, with Arsenal nearly getting every transfer right in the last few years. And one of the key people behind the transfer process is Edu Gaspar, who is constantly making right decisions right now for Arsenal. But it didn't always start like this, so how have we got to this point? Well, let's get into it. Edu Gaspar was signed in the summer of 2019, and this ended up being a few months before obviously Arteta was appointed in December the same year. And while the transfer strategy is definitely right, there was definitely a few times, and the first few years were quite rough for the team. Now, in his first year, he made a lot of signings that were definitely for the future, and I would say most of them have really worked out. You've got to look at Saliba and Martinelli being massive coups for the team, and Edu Gaspar was one of the main reasons Martinelli came in, that Brazilian connection, he knew him from Brazil. But you also have to look at the short-term gap signings weren't really successful. David Luiz definitely had good games for Arsenal, but overall wasn't brilliant. And obviously the main one, the signing of Nicolas Pepe for 72 million, ended up being a massive flop. He didn't really fit Arsenal and it didn't fit the system, and while he was still a good player, definitely not worth that round of money. But these all joined before Arteta was there, and he had Unai Emery, so it's going to be a manager with definitely different ideas and wanting a bit more short-term gaps rather than necessarily having a project in there guaranteed. Now, when Arteta joined, he wanted to get short-term successful passes to try and make sure that he could do his system as best as possible, but it did take a very much long time. And there was clearly a lot of discussion and a lot of an idea of what Arsenal wanted to do with their project, and I think there was a lot of stalling and not really sure where to go. They signed Gabriel pretty early in this window, and that ended up being a brilliant signing, and even when he came in, he was a big upgrade on the poor defenders they had. And they obviously thought there was definitely deals to be done. Willian and Cedric joined on frees, and Pablo Mari joined for 10 mil, and you've got to say none of them really have worked. They were definitely short-term stopgaps that in the end weren't even good enough short-term and actually regressed the team even further. But people like Thomas Partey also joined that summer, and for 45 mil, I'd say he's been a very successful signing and has been good overall. He's a very good player, and that made sense. But since then, in the last 3 seasons, you can't really argue with the transfer business done by Arsenal. It is clear that Edu and Arteta have finally found a system and players that they want to buy, usually aiming for players around the ages of 18 to 25, to look to improve the team, going for a young base for the team with a few leaders and making them lead from a young age to make them improve further on later. Now, while I think in certain situations Arsenal did really well to get people like Odegaard on loan, but then to buy him for 34 mil in the summer when a lot of people wanted James Maddison showed how much Edu and Arteta backed their belief, and I actually rate that so much, and I think that is one of the reasons it helped Arsenal. In the 21-22 season, Arsenal signed Ben White for 50 mil, who has been an absolutely insane signing and is one of Arsenal's best players by far. See Martin Odegaard, who is one of the best players in the world right now, and Aaron Ramsdale, who we can all say was a brilliant goalkeeper for the 24 million spent, and unfortunately probably won't be in the team much longer, but he definitely did a lot for this team. People like Lokongo also joined, and Tavares, and while I think Tavares hasn't really been a success and will probably leave in the summer, there's jury's still out for Lokongo because he could definitely still do something this year or could come into the team next season, and he's a good player if not, and there's definitely resale value there. But this is where you saw the clear ideas of when Arsenal wanted to buy players. They buy 18 to 25 year olds for most of their money, and they don't mind getting some cheap deals in, and they prefer players that can play in multiple positions even if they're not exactly the best in all of them. Also like to get some deals that they know are good and bargains, and this really comes into play in the next year and a half. In the 22-23 season, it was very clear from the out that they wanted to get people like Gabriel Jesus in. Jesus was their number one target, and they ended up spending 45 million on him, which he is a good player and he's still got a lot to offer for the team. While they couldn't get people like Lisandro Martinez, which they wanted to play left back, they ended up going for their plan B, which is Zinchenko for 30 mil, someone that Arteta knew well, using both Edu and Arteta's connections to get players. Saw the same when Edu brought in Marquinhos for 3 mil. Now, despite him not really working, he is that Brazilian connection, and they knew each other because Edu knows a lot of the Brazilian academies. And obviously Arteta has his links to Man City, that's how we were able to get these players. They also tried to get some deals this summer where they thought could be a potential upgrade in the future, such as a Fabio Vieira for 34 mil, which I still think he's a very good player, hopefully get to see him around the end of the season, and a Tomiyasu for 18 mil, and while at the time everyone was laughing, now you can't really argue with it. He has been one of Arsenal's most consistent players and is a very, very good player and can play anywhere. And this kept up the trend of Arsenal spending decent amounts of money every single summer without really selling much, so this meant every year it kind of has to be decreased a little bit. But they also made very good deals in January. Arsenal were obviously thrusted into a title race for the first time, and probably more earlier than they expected, and Edu and Arteta decided to go and get out some reinforcements that they thought were good deals at the time, such as your Trossards for 20 mil, Jorginho for 11 mil, and Kivior for 24 mil. And as sometimes the jury has been out on all of these signings, I think we can all agree for the money that we spent, all three of them are going to be worth it. Jorginho and Trossard have got real good leadership and good big game players for the team, and Kivior is a great young prospect who could definitely resell for, but more importantly is playing very well in the team. And one of the reasons why I think this has worked so well is not only because Arsenal finally have a team, because at the end of 2022 they actually promoted Edu to technical director and sporting operations, which means he's basically the director of football of the club and directs with Arteta who he wants to go out and sign. And I think this is one of the big impacts of why Arsenal are a better team now than they were before. Under Arsene Wenger, I think over the years it definitely became a detriment having him in charge of all the transfers. He can't go out there and scout people and really make a great judgment. He's just being told things in his ear, and sometimes he had great intuition on players but didn't end up getting them. And when he was so reserved with his finances, you can't really do that in modern football. I know it's not great to just keep spending your money, but even in the Premier League, table and lower teams are spending up to 100 mil. So you really have to put your hand in your pocket and actually buy players that you expected for years. When Edu came in with Arteta, they had a plan. Every year, every 2 years, they wanted to get some players, and if these don't work, they go down the list. The reason why Trossard came in when we couldn't get people like Mudryk. And it's the same reason why Declan Rice was signed for Arsenal. I think Declan Rice was a plan for them for a very long time, and they wanted to see if he didn't move in the years before and try and get him in the summer at that point every time. Same with people like Yuri and Timber. But they're also smart to change their ideas up or change their plan up when they need to, such as your Trossards. And I don't think Kai Havertz was really the long-term plan, but I think they saw it as a good opportunity there because Chelsea didn't want him anymore and they brought him in. And it's the same with the fact that David Raya was wanted years ago and they waited, got Rams to win, and now they've finally got the keeper they wanted. And while it sounds simple, it's really not for a lot of these teams to do this. Teams like Manchester United have struggled with their transfer policy and their transfer directions. As long as it's all lined up and the players and the manager all work together, then it's fine. Edu has definitely spearheaded this, and at the start I think we struggled a lot and a lot of people wanted him to get sacked. But now you can really see his real speciality coming out. He's really good at talking to players when they first come in. He can speak in numerous amounts of languages, and he's very well respected in football as well, which definitely helps with the players. He's also incredibly close to Arteta, and I think him and Unai Emery were never going to work as well as him and Arteta, and I think it's almost like a perfect duo because they take responsibility with each other and not one by themselves. And overall, it's not all about Edu. He hasn't done it all by himself, but it's the fact we have finally a team that all think the same, have joined up thinking, and actually have a project that they want to aim for every single year, looking to this year, looking to January every single time and trying to make good deals. This is going to make Arsenal a better club in the future, and you've already seen it, the amount of progress they've made in the last 2 years. And obviously people like Arteta deserve a lot of credit for his brilliant managing, but I do think the technical directors and all the team and the board deserve a lot of credit too. And even Kroenke, for the amount of money he's invested, Arsenal invest a lot now and we're finally spending around the same as the other clubs. And sometimes I do think director of footballs get outplayed at a club and they're not good enough anymore, but I do think that these guys can really work together for a long time, and hopefully they continue because it's really good for Arsenal. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and let me know who you think we're going to sign this summer to also make the system keep going on. Thank you guys for watching. Watch my video the other day if you want to see any more content, and if not, I'll see you in the next one.